Okay, Mark, I think it might be time. My pleasure to introduce to you Mark Lowe from NFT Mel and NFTcatcher.io. Mark was one of the co-founders of NFT Melbourne, which is another event that we had last month, which was a really wonderful one to be part of. So Mark's got the pleasure of interviewing Joseph and Harri and Arran from Divergence today. So over to you, Mark.
Oh, good. Hello, everyone. It is getting late on the day, so we'll try and make this as interesting as possible and not too techy or too geeky. But yeah, I'd love to introduce Joseph first off from Growing Data. And we've got Harri from Divergence. And Arran from Divergence. He's got diverted. Here we go.
He said he definitely had time to plug in.
Oh. Great. And even though Joseph is from Melbourne, not living here, so they have all actually flown in from Europe. So thank you for that very much. I'd love to just, each one of you just explain, I guess, your journey into this crazy Web3 and NFT space, how you got into it, what's your background, starting with Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my journey just started out of curiosity. Like I always thought I've been a highly innovative person. I've been programming for many years, heard a lot of things about blockchain and cryptocurrency, some good, some bad, and based my opinions primarily off the media until one day I'm like, all right, let's give this thing a crack. Let's actually build something and understand what's happening under the hood. So from the moment I did that, I never went back. I felt like, okay, I really understand what's going on here. I really see the value. And incrementally, that started to consume my life. I sort of went from, having my own startup, doing my own things to just not thinking about anything else other than blockchain. So yeah, I slowly transitioned full-time into the blockchain space. That's where I am now. I work full-time in the blockchain space, and I also build in my time outside of the blockchain space, outside of work. So yeah, I build all things NFTs, cryptos, ICOs, so yeah.
Is this on?
There you go.
We're both laughing because incrementally consuming your life is what NFTs do to everyone. I've also written code for like 25-something years now. I was working at Google as an engineer in something completely different, tinkering on the side on that image that you see. I've spent about 2 or 3 years working on the maths and computation behind it. And somebody said, oh, can you make that an NFT? And it incrementally just took over my entire life and just moved deeper and deeper into it. And the journey was that, for me, it's the closest I can ever be to like an early computer hacker. There's just so much core, simple, like base computing that I can work with. And that's what got me hooked.
Hi, I'm Harri. I'm Arran's partner, which is how we kind of fell into this together. We first started getting involved in NFTs, as he said, when my brother said, hey, that art that you've been obsessing about and just doing to yourself for a few years, do you think there might be someone in the NFT world that's interested? And we thought, it's kind of techy and nerdy and geeky. Maybe there's someone in this world that will see the beauty in it. And there was. But we got incrementally involved because I think we just got really captivated by the opportunity there was for bringing tech into creativity, both for creators and for the people who are getting to experience it.
Brilliant, thank you. So the title of the talk is The Artist Behind the Smart Contracts. In layman's terms, Joseph, what is a smart contract? And how does it differ from writing normal code or Web 2 code?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everyone has slightly different definitions of what a smart contract is. I guess the way I like to explain it is just like there's apps on an app store, you can build smart contracts to create apps on a blockchain. And some of the main differences there is that when you build an app on an app store, you can update your code, you can change it, you can do whatever you like to it. And that code remains private to the company that has sort of published that code. On the blockchain with smart contracts, it's a little bit different. So when you publish code to a blockchain, it is immutable, which means that it can't be changed. And it's totally public, right? So all that code is transparently up there. It can be obscured if you don't verify the code, but it is indeed all up there. And I guess the third difference is you have this clear chain of ownership and who owns what, because a lot of these applications which people are building on the blockchain with smart contracts is actually applications for digital assets, right? You can create ERC20s, which is commonly known as cryptocurrencies. You can build ERC 721s, which is commonly known as NFTs. But really, you can build anything. You're not just confined to digital assets. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I guess to Arran and Harri, would you classify yourself as artists or developers?
Yes. The artist moniker is something that I've found it quite difficult to say. I'm an artist. When I met Art Things, I'm a software engineer, I'm a computer scientist, but it's hard for me, at least, to communicate what I do to other people, and art is just a way that I can demonstrate that people can connect with and understand.
Yeah, I'd say that we're artists in that our artistic canvas is code, and it is actually the smart contracts themselves. And so some of the work that we do, which is the way that it differs from others, is rather than just using the smart contract as a mechanism for selling and trading NFTs, we actually write the code to create the art from directly within inside the smart contract.
And that's great. That leads me directly into the next question in terms of smart contract art. So when I'm trying to explain NFTs to people who've got no idea about them at all, I talk about art being very analog. It was painting. It was physical artwork, and everything else in our lives pretty much has gone digital, right? And NFTs is facilitating this transition over to digital art. Now, that can mean a couple of different things. So, say a physical artist, like say Danielle, scanning in a piece of artwork and just basically copying it, for the want of a better word. Then there are the Bored Ape type JPEG collections, and then there's the next step after that, which is smart contract art, which you just touched on. So, yeah, could you sort of give an overview of that sort of third piece? Like, what does that mean to people, and why is it so powerful?
You could probably, there's a bit of a few more steps in that gradient. They go closer and closer to being able to reproduce the artwork through the blockchain. People like the fact that it's long-lived, there's permanence behind this artwork. So there are other things. There's a huge movement in generative art where code creates the artwork, and there's this concept, people call it onchain, which means a lot of different things, but it's all about archival reproduction of the artwork. Can you, at its lowest form, prove that this was the identical JPEG? To can you reproduce it? To steps further, and we take it as extreme as we possibly can because that's fun. We have the smart contracts themselves do all of the computations. Like Joseph was saying, you can have different tokens, but really you can do what you want. We say, okay, well, let's make the token, not the token, let's make the smart contract do all of the computation, do all of the calculation, and spit out the artwork. So there's no externalities involved with it.
Brilliant, yeah. And in terms of, you touched on it there, was off-chain versus on-chain. So in terms of off-chain, think of like a JPEG, right? It can just be stored on a website, or it can be stored maybe on Amazon or Google Drive. But the issue with that is if Amazon goes down, your NFT won't work anymore. So that's, a lot of people sort of look at that in some way of a negative aspect, but it's not always negative. So I guess, Joseph, from your end, could you just explain sort of the off-chain, touching on maybe IPFS, and then we'll go on to the on-chain.
Yeah, so I think I can see more than one question in those statements, so I'm going to try and unpack as much of it as I can. So firstly, I guess there's this whole thing between on-chain and off-chain, and what do we mean by those terms? I think as you were saying, like, on-chain can mean many things, but in my eyes, what it means is that, if the data is stored on-chain, then it's on an actual blockchain, right? There is a clear ledger or presence of this information on the chain, and it stays there. right? With off-chain, we're talking about things which are not on the blockchain, and these things typically, they can persist for a while, like what IPFS and Arweave are doing in different ways, but then they can also just disappear in a flash, which is kind of what happens when a normal centralized database goes down, right? So if you store something on a Google Drive and you have an NFT pointing to that Google Drive and then you accidentally delete it, well, yeah, it disappears. So yeah, there's off-chain and there's on-chain. And then within the off-chain component, you also have centralized and decentralized, right? So centralized being these services which is controlled by like a single entity, like it could be myself or a company where they control the decisions. Or it could be decentralized solutions such as like IPFS, which is one of the most common patterns.
He's just getting a phone call.
Yeah, my phone, I'm not twitching, my phone is buzzing, I'm trying to stop it. All right.
And the IPFS thing is mentioned a lot. It stands for Interplanetary File System. So basically it means it's not one organization that's hosting it, it's all of us. So it's becoming it's more of a decentralized approach.
Yeah.
But it has some disadvantages to it as well, right? It has to be pinned.
Yeah, absolutely. So interplanetary file system, it lives here, it lives on Mars, it lives on the moon. No, but it could, but it certainly does not right now. You raised a good point, pinning. So the way that IPFS kind of works, and actually this is kind of funny because the people talking, there's like exclusive session next just about IPFS. Okay. So maybe we don't need to do it too much, but basically there's this concept of pinning, right? The way that IPFS works is that if you want to put something on IPFS, typically you download the IPFS software onto your computer and you host your image. If other people like it, they can pin it and host it as well. And then you have this decentralized network of sort of hosting things. However, if over time people decide this is not relevant, they don't want to host it anymore, and no one's hosting it and no one's actually viewing the image, then it can also disappear. And then that's where things like these pinning services like Pinata, which is really popular at the moment, they actually go to the effort of hosting and pinning that for you so that it persists for a long time.
Sure.
Yeah.
And a big point of some projects that you might be buying into is looking at where are they storing this data. I remember hearing last year was 30–40% of all NFT projects, you can't even access the data anymore. Now I haven't seen much of that myself, but it is a big thing to go, what technology, where are they hosting these files, what will happen if the website goes down or whatever else. So it's a very important thing to look into. And then I guess getting back to the on-chain. So there's a technology called SVGs, which is basically where an image can be just put as text. Because you can store an image on the blockchain, it just costs a lot of money, like thousands and thousands of dollars to actually store an image. So instead of storing a 5 megabyte image, you can actually use SVGs, which is text, and that can basically look like a very simple image. And I think Harri and Arran have done a little bit of that. And then there is the next bit where it's actually just the code is generating the image. So I guess, give us a bit more on that.
Yeah, what I would say about that, so there's a bit of a trend at the moment, which is on-chain is great. Everything should go on-chain if it possibly can. Despite the fact that we do a lot of that, that's not really the case because it's hugely expensive in terms of storage, and it doesn't always make sense. And when we've done something a little bit different to SVGs, one of our projects, which is called Blockchain.
So you can bring it up on the slides, Jared. Thank you. Yeah. And
it's a different one.
Next one. And then the kiss. Well, these are all similar.
But it's fine. And that's still not us, but it's okay.
Yeah.
We saw a conversation between a couple of people online, a couple of sort of very well-respected engineers in the space, someone called Simon DLR, Def Beef was one of them, saying that it wasn't going to be possible to create art from a smart contract which didn't use something like an SVG renderer to be able to interpret the outputs. And we saw that and basically took that as a challenge and decided we think that we can do it. So we found a way to sort of encode bitmaps from directly within the smart contract. This was done more to prove that it was possible rather than because it is a sensible thing to do. It was extremely expensive. I don't think we'll be doing it again, but it was more to make a point that these things are possible, and perhaps when gas is not quite as expensive as it is today, it will be a more popular option.
Nice, awesome.
I think I did a calculation the other day that like 1 megabyte of, like if you had an image and you wanted to store it and it was only 1 megabyte, which we know that images are actually much more than that, 1 megabyte was like $160,000 or something like that. So, yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, I think blockchain was 12 ETH at fairly low gas.
Wow.
So, yeah.
12 ETH per image?
For 1 mint?
No, for the whole thing. For us to put it on. So it was normal minting cost for everyone else, but for us to put the templates on chain. So, as I say, a one-off and not something we'd recommend to other people to try.
Nice. Now, the last slide that we just saw up there was from Kevin Rose and the Proof Collective, so the Grails. So that's probably one of the more popular projects that have launched in the last few months. I think the pre-sale, or for the Proof Collective token, it was like 30 ETH to get one of them. So yeah, could you give us a bit of background on it? So that image up there is actually from Tim Ferriss, who famous podcast guy. Like in terms of working with Kevin Rose and some of these artists, would love to hear more about that.
So for people who aren't familiar, Kevin Rose is a big name in this space. He's got an original podcast, Modern Finance, and now Proof, and he started a collective called the Proof Collective, which is a group of 1,000 avid NFT collectors. A few of them are here. And they want to push the boundaries of how do these things work? How do the mechanics work? What is the sociology behind it, the psychology, etc. And this idea of Grails, this latest project, was interesting. People are very, very quick in this space to buy something, flip it, try and make a quick buck, very quick, without really just jumping on hype. And this was a 2-week window in which you saw 20 artworks. You didn't know who made them. You didn't know anything about them. You just saw them. And the community and everybody in the community got one. And it brought out this very different dynamic to what people are seeing in the NFT space these days. Even though there was hype, there was still a lot of people saying, this is great, I'm engaging with the artwork, I'm learning about new artists who aren't even part of this, and it brought people together. And so we built the contracts for that, and that's why.
Yeah, I think there's something that was really nice about that project is with a lot of the more hype projects recently, I think a lot of collectors will happily admit that they can be quick to buy and to enjoy it for a short amount of time and then move on to the next thing that happens. And because there was this sort of an enforced week delay between when you could see the art and when you would know what you've chosen, people were encouraged to pick for the art. So people really analysed these different images to decide which ones really spoke to them, which I think was a slightly different way of interacting with and connecting with their art to what some of the people in this collective had done before. But the other thing that was really nice is everyone went on this really deep treasure hunt to try and work out any kind of little clue that was hidden in there. And there were like crazy conspiracy theories going on. And it all the amount of time that went into it is just mind-boggling. But what it did mean is a lot of people got to explore a lot of different artists who someone said, oh, this looks like it could be by X. And people would go off and look at all of their work and try and look at little clues and things about their style to see if they could identify something which would give an indication of who created which piece. And a few people have said that what that meant is it brought them back to appreciating art and to discovering new artists, which is actually why a lot of people got involved in the space in the first place. And it helped people kind of rediscover that part of collecting, which I think sometimes in this space, when it's so fast-paced, it can be easier to move on from.
For sure. Definitely. Amazing project you've involved in. And did you guys know who the artist and the art was? Were you that far into it, or?
We told Kevin not to tell us because we knew people would ask us.
Yeah.
And because we had a couple of that we could mint ourselves.
Oh, nice. Oh, brilliant. Awesome. I'm a Web 2 developer. I know a little bit of Web 3 stuff. Probably should know a lot more, but what recommendations or tips would you give to anyone, whether they're a Web 2 developer or just someone looking to get into the space from a development perspective? Is there resources out there? Where should they start? Should they look at sort of just, the JavaScript sort of world first? What sort of tips could you give?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about now this is Web 2 developers moving into like the blockchain space. Yeah. I think one of the really awesome things about the space is that there's so much free content. And if you know a programming language, there's some nice grounds for you to move in. Definitely, it can take a while to wrap your head around all the intricate parts of how blockchains work if you want to get that deep. But you might not have to get that deep depending on what you want to do. So, you know, there's, I would definitely like jump onto YouTube, check out like any sort of like question or idea that you have. People are putting out content every day. I used to work for a YouTube channel, putting out content, teaching people how to make things. So definitely YouTube is one of the great places to look. There's another guy called like Nader Dabit, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, as well as Patrick Collins, who does a lot of work with Chainlink as well. There's some really good names and YouTube channels to check out there as well. Yeah.
Harri, Arran?
Yeah, I'd say, again, one of the good things about smart contracts is, you can talk about that. One of the good things about smart contracts is that they are generally verified. If the smart contract isn't verified, run a mile from that project because you don't know what's going on. But it means that if you are trying to learn, you can look at any project, anything which has done something interesting. You can go and dig into the code and understand how it's been done. The one word of caution I would say is, with a smart contract, unlike most other software, once it's out there, it's out there. You cannot generally fix it. You cannot, if there is a bug, if there's a vulnerability, it's there. And there's huge amounts of money going through these things. So I think read as many things as you can. Ask the developers if you have questions or if you don't fully understand them, because everybody, particularly on Twitter, is super receptive and super responsive. We've not found anyone that we've kind of tried to get in touch with or ask questions about their work who hasn't been really helpful. But I guess my word of caution is, make sure if you are going to try and reproduce something that you really, really understand it before you do, just because, you know, there's no opportunity to roll things back.
Yeah, and playing on top of that, a shameless plug, we deliberately try and make things easier for new developers coming into the space. We have a set of open source contracts called Ethia, which is easier with a Lisp. And the idea is that, yes, this is hard. When things go wrong, a lot of money can be lost. I'm talking millions of dollars. And so things that are tried and tested and have had many eyes looking at them and have actually been used and put to the test, it's a good place to start. And if you want to build on top of that, by all means do. But as Harri said, copy-pasting is not a great way to go. Make sure you actually know what's happening under the hood.
Brilliant. And I also say to people in terms of development, smart contracts and Solidity, it's a baby, right, in terms of the evolution of it. Where do you see this space going in the next, I know it's a very hard question, but yeah, in the next sort of 2 to 3 years? Yeah, like, is there any sort of projects that you've got your eye on, anything that you're sort of interested in from even an alpha bit of information?
Yeah, I mean, one that comes to mind for me is Azuki, which is gaining a lot of popularity. This is a bit embarrassing to share, but when I actually looked at the code of Azuki, it was probably the first time I felt really emotional and wanted to cry. It was really quite beautiful in terms of the modifications they had made to the typical NFT standard to enable their customers to save as much money as possible and increase that sort of experience. So
because they developed the ERC-72A, right?
Yeah, so they created the ERC-721A, which is a modification to the ERC-721. And what it means is a dramatic cost savings when you mint NFTs, especially when you mint multiple NFTs. So like, if you mint one NFT, it's the same price as a normal one. But as you mint more, it's like, if you minted 100 NFTs, it would be the cost of minting like 4 normal NFTs. And so the cost savings is quite dramatic. And when you look at the code, you're like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Why didn't I think of that? It's like, yeah, it was really geniusly executed and really well done by them. So I think these things around gas, as the price of Ethereum, like the transaction fees on Ethereum go up, is becoming really important, and trends around that are becoming really important because, you know, for example, the other day I bought an ENS, which is actually just an NFT, right? It was like $5 or something like that, but I paid $200 in gas fees. It was actually a few months ago when it was higher, but still, like, those experiences kind of suck. Like, I really wanted the ENS, I did it anyway. But like, yeah. So if you can minimize those and reduce the friction points, I think it creates a better experience. And these are the things, which I'm seeing as a trend, right? Creators don't get enough credit for actually saying, hey, we're going to spend a little bit more money here to create a really amazing experience for our customers. This is what people are doing, but it kind of goes under the hood. It's not as highlighted as much, so I just wanted to highlight it.
I'm probably excited most about the people who are working at the edge of NFT contracts. Like, who is trying to push boundaries and do stupid things? And I deliberately say stupid things because I do stupid things just to see what is possible. The idea is that, like, art within a contract is a low stakes endeavor. If you have a couple of pixels off, it really doesn't matter. But it allows you to try and really experiment. I saw somebody build an entire chess engine into a smart contract. You play against it, and at the end of the game, it mints the board as an NFT for you, which is mind-boggling that this is possible. And I think the people who are doing this, yes, I'm biased because I consider myself in this space. That's who excites me, because it's like that's the people who are thinking not how do I do something, it's what can I do, and then you can take a step forward from that.
And is there any specific people, like, because I know, like, Doff, like, there's a few guys out there that, you know, are on those boundaries. Is there any ones you can recommend? So
a few people I can think of off the top of my head, Untokyo and Watsi from Kohi Art. Nice. They do a lot. CX Coda, Koda, he implemented a full 3D weather system within a smart contract that mints as an NFT image. Eugene, 5 out of 9, did the chess. There's a guy, Simon Framo, Divergence, who he's an encyclopedia of blockchain contracts. It just does amazing things.
What I am excited about is improving usability. UX in the space is dreadful. I have a friend who is a UX designer. She works in tech. I tried recently to explain to her, to kind of give her instructions on how to mint her first NFT. And it kind of brought home to me how much everyone who's already in the space has kind of written out those bad experiences. We've got rose-tinted glasses and forget how traumatizing and difficult it was to try and make those first decisions and figure out how to make things work. I think that we're also really quick to write off poor UX as just like a thing that happens. So you've seen this huge host of people saying that they've been hacked. It happens all the time. A lot of the time, they haven't been hacked. It's been a case of phishing scams. Why is that happening? It's because we've made it normal for people to sign messages that make absolutely no sense whatsoever, so you don't know what you're signing. We don't make it easy for people to look after their assets, for new people to join the space. And I think that's what I'm most excited about is when we can start solving some of those problems and take them seriously and make the space a lot more welcoming for everyone, because then I think until we do that, this space won't reach the potential that it has.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. We do have 2 minutes for audience questions. If anyone has any, put your hand up and this young gentleman will run over to you.
It's actually more of a comment than a question. First of all, yes, you do have amazing footwear. But aside from that, I just wanted to just agree wholeheartedly with your last comment with regards to the need for better UX. One of the things, even for me, I'm in this arena and have been for a few years, and even I struggle with it. And I don't know how I can possibly explain it to family members and others who are trying to come in and how to get involved. I've got a niece who's also in NFTs in a big way. And the two of us are trying to kind of like a pincer movement on the rest of the family to try and get them involved, or at least to understand. But the challenge is so real. You know, even just the concept of an NFT, let alone, okay, here's your MetaMask, and we'll go from there. And it's so much. So I really do agree with your comments. And I also just wanted to thank the panel for such an interesting and engaging session. I now have to show everybody at our team back in the office this recording because it was so good. You have it all on tape now.
Great.
I'm going to ask a question. I don't know if it's been asked already, though, but Harri, tell us about the pattern on your shoes. They are custom kicks from the Kiss Precise. Am I mistaken?
No, you're correct. So one of the images that was flashed up recently.
2 back image? Yeah, that one.
Yeah, this one is one of our projects. So this is all sort of created with integers and shifting around ones and zeros in the contract to create this art. But as sort of a homage to that, I decided that I wanted to get some new trainers made, which is what I'm wearing today. It's not a very long story.
Just on that note, I feel like these guys haven't got enough credit for that because they just understate themselves. Doing art on chain is incredibly difficult. I stay away from it just because it's a pure pain in the butt. So like, you guys deserve a lot of credit. Just so everyone knows. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.